So I think what really got me thinking about this was we were talking about doing a podcast, another episode where you and I were chatting, and after this Play Academy, this mentorship group meeting we had the other night, we had a flowing conversation about some technology and some different things we were doing as coaches that probably could have went on for 3 or 4 hours. And what I thought was the kind of the how that flowed with this particular group of coaches in that meeting would be something that would be very valuable to maybe some other coaches to hear, because it was just such a amazing experience. And that's why I reached out to you and said, hey, here's some guys we were talking on that play mentorship thing, and it was killer. And I could have stayed on there until about 2 o'clock in the morning if I wasn't old and sleepy, So it was really something great. So that's really the reason I brought this to you, this idea, I guess.
Yeah, I'm super thankful for you doing that. It's always fun to learn from my end, and to be able to share this with as many people as possible. That'll be a good way for people just to reach out to coaches that are super passionate about this, and kind of doing the before show here. It was cool just to hear everybody talk and what they're excited to talk about during this show. One of the things that came up, and I think maybe this would be a good way to highlight this before we kind of continue to go into the conversation, is they mentioned that Coach Rob Brokaw, who is the National Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year for the high school level, he wanted to learn more, right? He's a BTS alumni, and so we know that he's making the big time where he's at, but he's just making sure that he's always driving the profession forward, and along with that, he's reaching out to 3 or 4 guys and making sure that that's happening. So super thankful for him, thankful for these guys that are wanting to jump on with this, and I'll let them take the conversation away, and we'll see where this thing goes.
Yeah, I guess the idea kind of came about with my need to provide more feedback to my athletes, parents, and coaches, and I got into, okay, are we recovered enough? Are we ready to play? Are we prepared to play? And that kind of took me down a couple different rabbit holes on recovery. And that's actually what we were covering in the play mentorship for that week. So it was really what impact does our recovery methods have on their training and performance? And how can we analyze that? What impact does it actually have? And how do we measure that? Outside of, hey, how you feeling today, champ? Can we give some sort of actual feedback that we can monitor and
one word answers from our kids.
Yeah. So I kind of dabbed into what that looks like in other places. I mean, I've been doing a daily readiness questionnaire. I've been gathering some great data. I've been using that on the day-to-day, but I know that there's a ton more. In talks and listening to Coach Vanderbush at Ben Davis High School, his data collection, he doesn't do a ton of data collection, but what he has, it is on point. He can tell a freshman when they come into his strength training class, given their body weight and where they're at, by the time they graduate, you're going to put this much onto your clean. You're going to put this much body weight, lean body mass on. You're going to squat this much. You're going to get these results if you do what I tell you to do. And he's got 20 years of data to back it up. And it's holy, I'm missing the boat on having that kind of impact. And Adam can talk about some impact that he's seen outside of just the norm there. Yeah.
I mean, with Coach Vanderbush, I had the opportunity to play at Indiana State football, and so I played with a bunch of his athletes throughout the years and built good friendships with them. It's funny, most of the guys I'm still friends with are all Ben Davis graduates. So it's been really fun talking to those guys about the impact that they left on Coach Vanderbush before I even met Coach Vanderbush and got into the game. So when Coach Brokaw was talking about Coach Vanderbush's data, it's so meticulous and it's so refined and he's put many, many years into that. And so when I got started, I was like, I don't have that. And then I know he shares some of those things. And like we use our 230 for a clean as a benchmark for our football players. And one of the things that I started to get into is how am I going to build my own data set off of that. And one of the things I got was from Dr. John Kilgore. He has levels of based on the training age on a bunch of different lifts, including snatch, bench, squat, deadlift, and clean. And so it not only goes by their training age, it'll also give you an idea by their body weight and their gender. So that's how we built out our data set to see where our kids are at, and it holds pretty true. It's based off of over 70 years of research. If you're ever looking for that, you can get it on xrex.net. It's this old school, archaic website that you can find that stuff on.
There's your gold nugget right there. Something that, we talked about was, hey, take me through a day. If I'm a student athlete, right, take me through a day. I just finished my school day. I'm coming to the after school program, or maybe I'm coming to the last bell of the day. Like, what does it look like when I leave the school and I walk into the weight room with you? And the way we got to that was really from the play mentorship, when Coach Schofield was talking about the idea of readiness and preparedness.
Yeah.
And that was something we talked about. And so you were, and obviously you're going to explain it, but you were talking about what you do. And it was so profound. I think we were all kind of like, hey, like, I'm the athlete. Walk me through what it is that you do with your kids so that you know the readiness and preparedness for that day and that week and month, so on, so on.
I guess day to day, we use the questionnaire that we get we use our athlete management system. And then we also use a cold jump with the just jump mat, where they got the questionnaire, they come in, they walk in the room, they get the cold jump. That's what the cold jump kind of sets me down some potential if then scenarios. We're looking for if the jump is a 10% below their rolling average, then that's gonna lead me to a conversation with the athlete, which will also lead me to them looking at their questionnaire and trying to piece together whether they really, need a little bit of recovery, whether they need to go to a completely, regeneration workout. Whether I need to go in there and adjust their relative intensity in their workout with our athlete management system. You can do that pretty easily individually. Or if it's just one of those, they're okay. The questionnaire might not have been great, but they're feeling a little bit better now. Situations, and to be honest with you, it sounds like that takes a great deal of time, but it really doesn't at that initial stage, because they're just going to walk through and jump, and we make them jump immediately. Some of it's funny, they'll try to cheat sometimes and jump a little bit before they get to their cold jump, but I like to use that cold jump so that I'm getting basically exactly what they are at that point every single day that they come to me, based on what they've kind of done throughout the day. Some, the cold jumps first thing in the morning are going to be a little bit different than the cold jumps that come to me third period after school, but it's all relative, I guess, to what we're going to be doing in the hour after that anyway. So it's just, building in kind of that acute adjustments you might need to make right there, but then also building up a kind of a rolling average over a time of where you can look over a week or over a month, and you start to look back and get some patterns of things too, as far as what their hydration, their sleep, and that leads to an educational process as well. But I mean, I don't want to hog up all the time, but that's kind of what our initial, when you walk in the weight room thing looks like. And I know there's probably coaches saying, I got too many guys or girls, I can't do that. But honestly, that process takes about, no time away from the workout. We have a little bit, it's a little bit different than some probably at our place because we have our head coaches are in the class with us, particularly with football. We have coaches in there. So they have a little time when they get together right before class. And that's the time those guys change and they walk from the down the field house from the locker room into the team meeting room. And I have the pad laid out there, jump mat, and they jump on it and then they do their meeting. And in that 10 minutes gives me time to go out up to the weight room and, look at those jumps and look at the surveys, kind of put things together and then have the conversations that I might need to have. And then very quickly while they're doing kind of their little warm-up period, I can go in there and adjust if I need be, whether that be to, like I said, lower their relative intensity or switch their workout to kind of a regeneration recovery workout. And it doesn't happen a whole lot. Like, honestly, I was kind of talking about this one time with some coaches and they said, well, ultimately they just you gotta train through some of the stuff. And I agree, you got to train through some stuff. But when your athlete comes in and their rolling average is, 23.9 and they come and jump a 18 or 17.5 or whatever. And then you talk to them, they're like, yeah, I just, I didn't get any sleep last night. I'm a little stressed out about this. That takes 30 seconds to, especially if you have a good relationship, they're going to be honest. That whole process goes quick. And I'd rather adjust one workout and then have them for the rest of the week than push them through, So I guess that's kind of the walk in the door.
Yeah. And on top of that, I did. So I'm doing the baseline of that after we had our conversation. I'm doing the baseline. And we had talked about, and Coach Atallah can attribute to I'm not having them put that into their online platform. I'm taking those numbers down and seeing the numbers go in and having that baseline. Like I'm seeing the numbers and trying to right away, I could kind of see how I'm going to be able to use that. They come in, they're getting their rack set and, hey, come get your jump. And it's just like they just roll right through. It's gone really well. So thank you guys for all that advice.
That's been a week now, right?
Yeah.
Rob, you've been doing that for like a week.
Yeah. So it's been
That's
going,
awesome.
It's been going really well. Our kids are more in tune too. I had one kid ask a really good question. So he had a training set, or his training sessions at like 3 it's the last period of the day. So he had the question of, him at that time, is that going to be different than the person that's training in the morning? Like, would the recovery benefits, from the hours of sleep that he has roll up to there? And I was just like, one, that's an awesome question. Like the fact that you're thinking like that is great. And two, I have no idea, man. I think that legitimately it makes sense. You're more awake. You're going to be a little bit more alert, but what's that effect going to be over the long term? And I think that's why we do the baseline and then use the rolling average to see where you're at.
And Hoove, you do max vertical. Well, you do that cold, but that is a single jump max vertical versus like an RSI, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Was it with
what's
arms?
your thought
Are you
there?
using arms too, or is it hands on hips?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. Are you keeping it the same?
Yes. So I started with arms and I really want to switch to hands on hips. Especially after we kind of talked, that would make a lot of sense that I think when you take the arms out of there, you're probably taking out some of the skill. Someone might be just better at that skill of the arms and the quickness and how to, but I didn't want to mess up just yet. So I think future cycles, because like I was telling you guys, what I do is I kind of use it in blocks of time. And then I reset the baseline, when some of the training parameters or the in-season stuff, whatever, it changes. So as the parameters begin to change in the future, I'm going to go to hands on hips because I don't know that it'll be that big of a difference, but I think I want to get as true a jump as possible. And I think the hands on hips will give you a much truer number consistently. So that's kind of something that I learned, the other night. I had thought about that, but Because when we do the RSI, what do? We make them put their hands on their hips.
Yeah.
So doing the cold jump would be advantageous. I had the baseball guys the other day do the 4 jump RSI, and it worked really good. And I think that might be a tool that I'm going to start thinking about maybe in the future.
Yeah.
For that, maybe like a once a week RSI test, because it did take a little bit longer. But yeah, it's just go back to your original question is I have them snap down and just like we're doing a vertical, like we would if we were doing a vertical jump.
Now, Adam, I did have one other question there. I'm doing the hands on hips. And I at the first period of the day, first time I'm doing it, I told some of the kids their number, but then I decided to go blind. So I'm not letting them know the number because I think that that's going to mess with their psyche with their vertical jump. Have you done any of those? Do they know their numbers, or are you keeping them blind?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, I let them know their numbers. You know what I mean? They want to know them. I want to give them the feedback. I don't want them to feel like I'm hiding anything. But also, like you said, like movement strategy, like you're talking about with the arm swing and things like that, they're going to try and find a way to hit that number when you're doing a counter movement jump. And so something's better than nothing, right? And then like RSI is going to take a little bit out of that because now we're averaging either 4 jumps or 10 jumps or a drop jump, which can be a little bit more difficult because you have to find the ideal height. But then you're getting an idea of what you need to do. They can't cheat it as easily, right? If their hands are on the hips, they can't use the upper body. If they have to do multiple jumps in a row, it's harder to try and recreate that movement strategy to get a higher number than it is with just one cold jump. However, that being said, a cold jump is still brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, and the good thing is like what you were talking about, Rob, that you took from Hoover is that you're watching him do it, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell too, because there's movement mechanics that you're looking at there too. So you can use it as a screen as well. And you can look at valgus knee. You can look at a lot of different things when those athletes are coming in there and they don't even know that's going on. So you can say, hey, look, he's moving a little funny. You can tell he's trying to he's storing energy longer before he jumps to try and recreate the number that he wants to get or she wants to get. So that's always something to think about as well. And I know Atallah, you're getting into some pretty cool stuff too with this like transitional phase that you're going into.
Yeah. So the RSI thing for me has been, I feel like the RSI thing has been what has been the glue to bring everything that I've been trying to work with my staff on together. So myself and I have an assistant strength coach. His name's Bill Shoemaker. The dude's amazing. He's retired 3 times. Like he's had 3 different careers. He loves what he does. And he loves pouring into kids, but he's brilliant. He's extremely smart. He's been doing some research, and we started building this program. And so what we came up with was a 5 to 6 week transitional performance speed and power program. So the idea behind it is you're literally taking your last 5 to 6 weeks of programming for a team in the upcoming season. The only way that a team has the ability to take part in this program is to have an 8 to 10 week comprehensive strength and conditioning program first, right? So like they have to build the foundation first. They have to earn this. It actually has created a lot of optics because now I got teams saying, well, like, how do we get to do that? And it's like, listen, let's round up the troops and let's get committed for an extended period of time. Let's not be inconsistent. Let's not use excuses. Let's make the time, right, Rob? Let's make the time for what's important. And then it's also been a great conversation for the coaches. So now the coaches are getting in there. So to bring that all back in, our lacrosse program has been extremely committed since the fall. They've done a killer job. We've been able to take those football guys when they were done, give them their, supposedly 2-week break, although they're like banging down the door to get back in, to get going again. And so most of that team is intact now and been going. Only a couple guys are in winter sports. And so they've gone through the last 8 weeks. So now we're now on week 5. So here's what's cool, guys, is that this is our last week of this program and the overall off-season program for them. And on Monday, they literally start. So their last power progression for us and what we're doing is on Friday. They get the weekend and then Monday rolls and like they're practicing. So what we've decided to do was how do we take some of the stuff that we were doing? So we were doing basically our power and speed production was coming from 5 sprints in a number of stations. And so you have a sprint station, you have a rest station. At that rest station, that's your data entry. So that 40 that they ran, you record that 40 at that station. The goal is to keep within 0.2 of a second of that initial 40. So I wouldn't call it a cold 40 Hoove, right? We don't want to ever do that, but it's that initial one, right? So typically what we see is at least one or more of those sprints after that initial that are right at the same, if not better. And then after that, you'll start to see that taper off, right? As as we talked about, Adam, the speed reserve, right? And so we're building speed reserve and doing this. So after that data entry station, we have 4 more stations that they do. One has RSI in it, and then like a little yoga flow. One is an actual true like power station. And this is where I needed some help from you guys. You gave some great advice, but our power station is barbell high pull with controlled weight. So I'm not interested in them at this point because I don't have the technology and I don't have the resources, but the bar needs to be moving. And so we're doing it at a high pull, right? The idea behind that is everything is fast from the ground up, and then you let that bar go back down, you recover, reset, do it again. We're also doing, for the sake of time and safety, we're doing landmine split jerk, right? So, starting, driving to the ground, drive up, right? Creating that power through that. Then after that, we go to like a stretch and flex station, and then they're gearing up for the next 40. So we keep it on a 90-second to 2-minute rotation so that they're constantly moving, but they're still getting the rest time they need. And we go through that. And that's what we've done last 5 weeks. Well, now what we're doing in the weight room with that as well on those other days is we're putting RSI into that. And I would say slowly is not the right word. I'm slowly coming into RSI, but I'm like diving full in, head first. And Rich Burnett's been great helping me with that. He's been doing RSI stuff for a while, along with you, Vogues, you've been helping me kind of work through this. And I mean, this is long overdue for a podcast per se, but I mean, RSI has become the thing. Schofield talked about it in his, in his presentation in the play mentorship and all the rich value there. So I know, Rob, we talked about like, what does that look like at every level as well? Like RSI is something I think you said was on your map now too.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years of trying to get just research and try to figure out how I can implement it into my systems. Because again, I like and Adam touched on it, there is the multifaceted, they can't cheat it. They can't get, so it's true feedback, it's something that they could really get, that ground contact time, how much strength they actually have, relative strength to their body weight. So it's all those things built into one. It's complex, but at the same time, it's something that where we need to go. And again, that feedback part of it, being able to say, okay, well, this is where we're at. This is why your training's going the way that it is. That it's the next step, but it's more, I really think that you have to have your systems in play before you can even come close to doing this stuff. So, I mean, this is my 5th year here, and I'm feeling confident. Okay, now we could start progressing this way and having these movements or that RSI, that feedback, not only for the parent or not only for the kids, but for the parents and the coaches too, being able to tap into that practice, the practice plan a little bit and maybe see what they're doing and how we can implement that into our planning.
Actually, on that note, Rob, that you just said that, my lacrosse coach literally was telling me how he was getting a snapshot of every guy, and it wasn't who's the fastest 40. It was how many of my guys can run consistently at a speed that I understand where they are, but they will do that for me every time. So like theoretically running this transitional program leads to that. And so what I was asking Vogues, and this is where Vogues, you're going to take over and talk about this because this is so far outside of my reach, but I was trying to find out, how do I take metrics of the power with just relative strength, right? So that strength index. So like I'm doing it with deadlift, but I know Vogues, you're doing, I think your squat, right? I don't want to speak for you, but so I was trying to understand that so that not only does my coach see how many times can this kid run at this speed, but how strong are they relatively to that? And then the RSI, the reactive strength index, like then the twitchy, the power as well within that. So Vogues, I'm kind of passing you the torch, man, because this is where we were all taking notes at this point.
Yeah, before we dig into that real quick, Preston, are you guys using any RSI? Are you guys using any sort of readiness, even with surveys and questionnaires?
So we do questionnaires. It's all written. I do not like track it real time. And that's something that I've looked into, something that I might do. My logistics are still even a little bit different than Mark's, Coach Hoover's. And so like the cold jump sounds really good to me. I'm thinking like I'd have to do it like as soon as they walk out of the locker room from change, like go right into it type thing. And then I've been working on how to record that through Google Forms and then flow right into data sheets, kind of some stuff like that, so that maybe I could pull it up fairly quick and have some immediate feedback with that. I think that would be really good. I was interested because I know Coach Hoover does APRE with it also, and a lot of velocity-based training stuff. And it's like stacking one thing on top of another. And what I mean by that is like essentially you're finding the best or the sweet spot for that athlete for that day. And that's really what we want to look for, right? Like depending on all the variables that are going on in these people's lives, we want to give them the best stimulus that they can, train from or get better in. Like anytime we go above and beyond that, we're kind of screwing the kid. And anytime we're less than that, we're not giving them the best that they could. So I like the idea of just being able to stack things on top of each other to make sure that we've got some things in place within systems that regulate, because we don't know, like if you just go straight off of percentages, we don't know if that's light for them, heavy for them, whatever it is. So I like where all this is going. I'm excited to, Coach Vogel, when you take over, kind of hear a little bit more of what you've got going on. RSI is our next thing, and I'm actually super excited for Rich Burnett's putting out some new software, a new device that I'm excited about. So you
better believe we're trying to get on that right now too, Coach. We're all trying to get on that list. We're trying to get on the short list with his plyomat.
Clawing and fighting. Preston, it's very uncomplicated how I keep those records. I write them down and I put them in a Google sheet every single day. And on the side, I've got their peak jump, their average jump, and what that converts to in inches using that conversion program. And then every morning I print that list out and I write the new number on that list, and I have the average over there to look at it. I actually added in last week what their 10% drop would be. So the number I'm looking for at the 10% drop is on that list along with their average. And that's it's not as,
I'm not saying that I wouldn't do that, but for me, that's like another step of like data entry that I just don't feel like I can. Right. But I do think if I spend enough time, I could do a conditionally formatted spreadsheet that would go as soon as they fill out a form. Like we've got a system for recording data now. As soon as they fill out a form, I could have a sheet that's open in our KPI database that would just do what you're saying.
Probably a lot better than what I'm doing, but I just
no, I'm not saying it like that. More so, just like time efficiency.
Yeah, that's what I mean too.
I get bogged down.
Yeah, that's the greatest commodity, right? Is time. That's something we can't replicate,
Absolutely.
Can't reproduce. And so that kind of what got me down the rabbit hole at first is like I was telling our administration and our athletic director at the time, hey, I need more help. I need another coach. And they're like, well, we can't invest in that, and so that's how we got down that's one of the reasons why we got down the technology route. It was, well, then I need resources. And so by having like we use TeamBuildr, having an athlete management system and having like GPS and using VBT and using Nord boards and Vol performance and things like that, all that stuff is just resources for us to have extra coaches in the weight room without having an extra coach. And so then how do we manage all that, right? Because like you're saying, like, I don't know if I have time to enter all that type of stuff in. I need to be looking at the data, not entering it. And so what we've done is we've started to have our students that want to help either during their study hall hours or after school that that are not in season during that time. And we call those people athleters. And so they'll go through about a 4-hour training with me at some point, and then we'll take them right into our programming, and they'll record those things for me. So they know the test protocols and things like that. And so they get ownership in it. And now I have all these assistants, and we also have interns from time to time because we have a university a half a mile away, and they do better than our interns, believe it or not, because they know our system and only our system. They don't know any other system. And so I don't have to worry about like retraining them on things, or like they've done it for 2 to 3 years because they're not usually an assistant for me until they're a junior or a senior. So they know exactly what's going on and how to do it. And so then that frees me up so that I don't have to worry about doing all that testing. And then like you were saying, building steps off of steps with the RSI, what got me going down that road a little bit was, first of all, with basketball and volleyball, right? Like a max vertical, and I was getting kids up to like in the 30s for their vertical, but they're still not like, it's not showing on the court, right? Yeah. And so it's like, what are we chasing here? What are we trying to improve? And so then when I started reading the Eamon Flanagan stuff about RSI and started seeing what Push was putting out with it, and I'm like, okay, this might have some intrigue here, because most jumps, like even for NBA athletes, are in the teens. And so repeat jump ability, if you want to use that as a term or whatever, that's what we were kind of looking at, and that's what got me down that road. And so one of the things I always struggle with, I like how we do our progressions. We go movement first, right? And then we work on strength, then we start to work on power, and then we go into speed and capacity. But we're always using a vein of one of those things at every session, but we have an emphasis for that group of what they need. Well, one of the things I struggled with was, where do my plyometrics fit into all this, right? Because that's a whole nother animal. And so RSI helped me with that. So when we looked at their RSI, we put them into 3 levels. So if they're above 2.0, they're in the advanced level for plyometrics. If they're in the 1.5 to 2.0, they're in the mid-range. And if they're below 1.5, they go into the beginning range of our plyometrics. And so that doesn't change the jump height, for the boxes they jump on is based off their vertical, but what type of jumps they're doing is based off of their RSI score. And so taking that to one more level, okay, I would also compare that. What Atallah was referring to was our back squat. So we look at and you can do it with front squat, but for back squat, it's 1.7 times their body weight. For our offense and defensive tackles and offensive linemen, we look at more along the lines of 1.9 to 2.0. And so once they're strong enough, okay, we know that we probably need to do power work with them, but then we can kind of look at that like, okay, so do they need more plyometric work and more power work? If they have a low RSI score, then they definitely do. Whereas if they have a low relative back squat, we need to continue to work on strength before we're going to really focus on their plyos and their speed, strength, and BBT stuff.
Hey, Vogues. So what happens when you have, we're talking relative strength, right? So what happens when you got a kid who's dumb strong, like, you know, I'm talking who, right? Country strong, like they're just dumb strength. What does that look like? So let's say they're over a 2.0.
Yeah. So
how are you evaluating? What are you doing?
Yeah. So like example of that right now is our tailback has a 2.39 body weight ratio to his back squat, which is really high. And he's a tailback. So does he really need to be any stronger for his position? So we're saying, hey, I don't think so. I think what we need to work on with him is being more explosive. And he's pretty fast, but like that's his game anyway, right? And so what we started to do with him is doing more stuff that's going to be on the speed strength side. And when we're doing accentuated eccentrics, okay, I'm cutting him out of that because he doesn't need that. Okay. So instead of him doing accentuated eccentrics with the offseason group that's doing that, he's going to do speed squats, and we're going to focus on him building more speed and power. And so I'm going to pay more attention to his power output than I am about his strength, because I already know he's strong enough. So we're just going to shift what we're looking at. The next phase of what I want to get into is starting to look at their eccentric strength, and do they need more eccentric strength or not? But we haven't got down that road yet.
I mean, that's so far down the road.
That's we're kind of doing the exact same thing, man. That's awesome to hear that, because we have body weight kind of standards where we kind of get into strong enough as well. And that was kind of something I had to kind of, luckily I have a real growth minded head football coach, because, you know, a lot of coaches, and, you know, I had that background, you know, way back when too, was the stronger you are, the faster you are, the better you're going to be at football. And what you find out real quick when you start looking at this kind of data and really learning about how it all works is there's definitely a strong enough point where adding strength is not necessarily going to make them a better football player or a better volleyball player. And you got to decide what direction to go in. And that's what you were just saying was pretty much exactly what we do. When they get to that strong enough point, now we switch how we're progressing them to power output. Luckily we have the VMAX Pro, so we're able to do that. But I think you could do that even without a VBT device, in a way, because, you kind of can get the feeling of where they need to be from a bar speed standpoint, even without that. But that is something that it took me a little bit of time early on to grasp. But I think that's something that a lot of coaches would benefit from if you start looking at, okay, like I had a few years ago, I had a guy come up, assistant coach come up to me and say, hey, we need this guy stronger. His defensive line needs to be stronger. And I'm looking at his numbers and I'm like, all right, he weighs 260 pounds and he bat squats butt to the ground, 470. He's a 300-pound bencher. He's a 500-some pound hex bar deadlifter. He's getting pushed around the field. We probably need to look at what he's doing from a skill execution standpoint, because you know what? Making that guy squat 25 more pounds isn't going to make him better if he already is that strong and getting pushed around. So that's, I think part of our job, is as strength coaches is to kind of come up with these ideas and how we use them, but then get into places like this and talk to people about that. Because I think overall, that's what's best for the kids. I think
so he's a cannonball, and you need to be a missile.
Yes, and I think that is a battle that a lot of us probably fight. I don't have to fight that, luckily, in the situation I'm in now, but I have had to fight that before, which was if I'd rather lift and if we have to give up on our sprints, then that's what we need to do. But we need to be in their lift. We need to be in their lift. And we need to be in their lift. And I think, people sometimes probably in Schofield said it the other day, they probably look at him and say, he doesn't like strength. Well, that's not true. And people probably see posts from me and sometimes think that I'm not a big strength guy. That's absolutely not true. I think there's a time and a place where you're developing all these different aspects of it. But there's also a spot where your athlete is strong enough. So that's not saying don't keep adding some strength, but you know what? They're still going to get stronger, because ultimately that's kind of what I've sold to our coaches. If 480 is their hex bar deadlift max, and they move that faster every time they lift it, that is stronger, right? That's the type of strength that will transfer. So, I think, man, it was really good hearing you describe that, because it makes me feel like I'm on the right path too.
Do you guys think that power drives strength? Like a couple times, even in this conversation, we've heard have a strength base. We want to do 10 weeks of strength training before we can do this prep type stuff. Do you think that power, if we do it more concurrently or more emphasis or hit max velocity speeds or focus more on plyometrics, it would drive strength anyway?
Strength sets the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So strength sets foundation. So they have to, otherwise it's like swinging a wiffle ball bat, right? Like, I think that's what you said, right, Rob? Is that what you said?
No, you said it, but it was it hit the nail on the head. So it's like, okay, so why are we focusing on strength like at all? Is the power going to be the driving, like you said? This was it. And Vogel said, well, that's great, but if you're whipping a wiffle ball really, really hard as opposed to whipping a baseball really, really hard, that's the difference. If you have enough strength to maintain the form and throw a baseball as fast as you could throw that wiffle ball, so you need to have that strength first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not.
But it's okay. Each sport's different.
I'm a strength coach too.
Yeah.
I get what we're saying here, but what I'm saying is more concurrently. So like a lot of times, something that you would hear maybe when I was in college, this is something that you would want to do 2 times body weight squat before that you do depth jumps or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And
I see it as I see that as, and again back to Schofield, and he got this from Vern Gambetta, is you have to have a thread of everything in your training. So yeah, you're going to get some benefits of it, but that power training is not going to be as effective without that strength. So if we really, like, I was hearing Adam talk about quarter squats is like that part of me is always going to be a little bit tough to grasp. But then he explained it. If that kid's already got the squat strength, we want to have that force production, and then we're looking for power output.
Yep.
If we can get the power output that we're looking for without putting that kid, in season in a spot where we're overexerting in certain, and he put it more elegantly than that, but it was having that quarter squat drive the idea home. That's when we would want to get there. Now, that kid isn't going to have the strength gains that those other kids that were doing full squats through their program, but they don't need that because they already have it. You know what I mean? So that they're already to that level, and now we just need to put spinners on them. We need to have the wheels.
So
Guys, we were talking. I don't know if I was telling you guys this or somebody, but I got one of our seniors is has a chance to be a really great sprinter, and they take him out of our weightlifting classes when football season's over. They go to, so he hasn't been in class. He's been kind of training on his own coming up for school. Well, now he's getting ready for track, and we're timing him, and his numbers are kind of slowly dipping down. And so I talked to him about his training, and this kind of goes back to the strong enough point. And his all at 187 pounds, his all-time back squat at a state weightlifting meet was 525 at 180 some pounds. So but I didn't think he was still squatting like that. So he said, yeah, I've been going butt to grass, heavy squats. I'm doing a lot of bodybuilding stuff. And I looked at him, and sure enough, he gained about 10 pounds. And he's like, but I don't understand why my times are going down. My times are going down. Yeah. And I was like, man, I said, you have to, the results, what's going to transfer to what you have next is what you need to be doing. You the only thing that matters for you is the 100 meters right now, so you need to scale. You're strong enough, and so you can go back and do, if you want to do 505 with a quarter squat and just move it super fast, you're going to start to see, you're still going to be strong because you're strong as an ox, but that power development, making that the emphasis. Well, like Rob just said, that they were talking about keeping a string of everything in there, I think is and that's kind of the art of this whole thing, is when that one was an obvious one. Like clearly any one of us would have diagnosed that same thing, as would any qualified strength coach. But the art of this, I think, is to be able to look at each individual athlete and decide based on what they're going to be asked to do in their sport and kind of what they can do and what their needs are, where that strong enough point is and how to convert that. That's the art of it.
Couple things. I just have some thoughts here just around what we're doing since we're talking about this. So first one is one of my goals has to kind of eliminate focusing on the outliers. Like who had the top vertical, who had the top 40. I'm trying to close the gap of that range and say, yeah, we had a couple guys on the cusp that are like freakish. That's awesome. And we have some underclassmen or some younger men, young ladies, young men that, are still trying to figure it out. But man, like the density of the group, there's a range. Because I feel like with that, like a coach, at the end of the day, we don't play any sports, guys. Like strength conditioning, you are a service. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's what we are. We are support service to every team that chooses to entrust their program with us. That's what we are. That's what we do. So I have the conversation with the coach. Would you rather have one or two guys or gals that are just outlandish and the rest of the team be very subpar or average? Or would you rather have most of the team at average or, above average and stay that way throughout? So I'll give two examples. Coach Pedersen, to answer your question about is there a difference in the power and the strength, and does one? So what I stuck with was this: we don't get to the power without first doing the 8 to 10 week strength program. And the reason I saw is because I feel like I can get the most for the team in the 8 to 10 weeks and developing them, right? So maybe eliminating some of the asymmetries, some of the valgus, right? Common things that we see. Some of the general strength, being able to have a 1.0, like, you know, one of our goals is how quickly can you get to 1.0, you know, relative strength, right? Where you're moving your body weight, right? Because again, all these kids want to say, hey, I want to bench. Well, you can't do 10 push-ups of your own body weight. So, you know, so trying to create goals within this, but keep them moving. But what was awesome was I got affirmation from my coach, and who, this same thing you talked about, your football coach. So my lacrosse coach tells me, man, Adam, we're getting just about everything that I feel like we can out of these guys right now, from how fast they were moving, how well they were stopping and starting, controlling their bodies, staying physical and box lacrosse, but much tighter space. And he was very happy with what he was seeing. To me, that was the green light to say, hey, let's get into some power. Then if you're happy and these guys are seeing results and they've spent the time, then let's try to take this and let's maybe not have just cannonballs, but maybe let's make some missiles too, right? To Vogel's point. And it was really well received. And my coach told me, he's like, Adam, at the end of the day, after doing this extra 5 weeks, if we all relatively get one step quicker, just that, I will be very happy. He's like, but it's clear that this is already increasing, right? I've had a number of young men just through this power phase. They've already still increased on deadlift. They've already increased on max vertical. They've already increased on broad jump, right? Their body control, just like being able to do like a single leg RDL, there's a huge difference, right? So I don't know, you know, where that goes in terms of all the programming, but there's definitely something there, right? There is absolutely something there that is working for us right now. And I do think it has to do with the fact that we had a majority of those guys commit to 8 to 10 weeks in a strength program, right? That was programmed out with the intention of hopefully getting into a phase where we can train power.
Do you still do plyometrics during that time and max velocity sprint?
I'll tell you, the only plyo I'd say that we're doing with that would probably be the RSI jumps on top of the sprinting. And basically the way we're doing it is Monday is hinge pull. Wednesday is that basically very focused power speed day. And then Friday is our squat press. And that's what we're doing. So we're condensing some of the things we normally would do. But again, we can switch from focusing, well, dang, we're not getting enough upper lower bodies. You know, well, we already did that. So we can let some of that go. So I would say my plyos are very calculated. We count them all out. We're very intentional about that. If we're doing any other plyo work outside of that Wednesday, typically it might be on the Monday, Friday. And again, we're very intentional. Like, no, you don't get extra jumps. No, you don't get another shot at this. Make these your best right now. And you know, there's going to be refining. I'm nowhere near where I need to be. In fact, I'm texting Vogel way too much and Rich Burnett way too much. Actually, they should be charging me for their time. But I feel like I'm finally developing something that is our own for our school and our program, but we're collaborating with so many people on the cusp of something that I think could be really special. Not a lot of people are doing a 5 to 6 week speed power program at the end of right. But I'm feeling really good about it because I know the foundation that was laid ahead of time. And again, the coaches trusted me, right? Who that takes so much pressure off as well when your coaches
Adam, I
trust
think
you.
what you're doing there is, you know, and this is kind of cliche, but you're not chasing max strength numbers. You're chasing adaptation. You know, you have a very specific, and I think that's where everybody here definitely that was talking here is doing that. We're chasing adaptations that are going to transfer to sport as opposed to just chasing, I want everybody to, I heard a coach once say, when I have 10 guys that can bench 300 pounds, I know I'm going to have a good football team. That doesn't make any sense. Like that could mean you're going to have a good football team. That doesn't necessarily, because, I can bench 300 pounds. You want me out there at this point in time? No. So I think what's cool that you're saying, and what I love hearing Adam talk about is you guys are chasing the adaptations, and that is where I think this field is going. Know exactly what you need. The said principle, right? Know exactly what demands are going to be imposed to get specific adaptations, and that's awesome. I want to talk to you more about that, because I think you're chasing those adaptations in exactly the right order, and that's going to pay off for you.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I still, like, in my brain, I'm thinking I still have these cats for 6 years. So when they're rolling through here, it's hard for me. It's still an annual plan, but there's a bigger plan involved. Mm-hmm. So we're still rolling. My junior high kids are still going to roll. We've had great success with the plan that we have, and will I start rolling some of this stuff to introduce them to our new rituals and norms? Absolutely. Because why wouldn't we, right? So I get them used to the idea of RSI, and I get them used to the idea. I may not track it near as much, but I want to get those ritualized and moving in the right direction. So that way, when they're in there, man, maybe I can get some of those interns, those athletes, like Coach was talking about, rolling through.
I like that a lot.
There's a time and a place for everything. So when I get to that first part of my summer, we're all focusing on gaining some lean mass, because that's probably the only time of year that we're going to be able to focus on gaining lean mass. I'll still have a thread of power. I'll still have a thread of sprints. And then as we get closer to the season, and like Atallah is saying here, like being more intentional with it, definitely I need to be more intentional with it and getting more away from those strength gains that we're seeing in that lean mass build, preluding to the season. Most of my athletes are 3-sport athletes. That's a good thing. I want to keep that. They're also in the band and in the all-school play. So, because if you don't, then we don't have an all-school play, and that'd be tragic. So we get all that time, and there's a time and a place for everything. But I think that this RSI and the recovery, or that impact, that what we're having is that adaptation that we're looking for. I think it's Jesuit schools. They have a graduate of a profile. And I got this from, I think it was Jeremy Weeks before he started doing barbecue, which I still need to try that barbecue of his. He was at Dallas Jesuit. I came across some random presentation that he gave at Jesuit High School. I just remember the weight room looking cool, and he had a lot of good things to say. But he said that the one slide was the idea of the profile of a graduate and what it looked like. So I'm always looking, what does somebody that has gone through my program for these 6 years, and again, come full circle back to Vanderbush's, this is what happens when you go through my program through these however many years. So I think that it's something that there's going to be a time and a place for it, and there's going to be rotations, and every coach at every different school is going to have a different way to look at it. And that's what makes this a lot of fun, because this crew right here, I'm working with 130 to 150 kids a day. Some of these guys are working with like 8,000. I think that's the number that feels that way. So if they don't see any excuses for me or for them not to go through this process and provide this feedback and to make the big time where they're at, then we should be doing the same thing across the board. It's going to look different for everybody. And what's going to be neat is seeing how many people come out with how they're doing this, or how they're getting this accomplished, and the results that they're getting. And again, it's just like we're getting things started. We still have a lot of high school programs right now that they don't have the strength coach. They don't have a dedicated unified program. We got to make sure that there's a time and a place for everything. And this is what you could end up doing. You could end up getting to the spot and connecting with these cats. So like we were saying, there's a time and a place for everything, but we got to make the time, right? Atallah, we got to
Yeah,
make
buddy.
the time.
Yeah, buddy. Absolutely.
Can we back up a little bit to what like Preston was asking about the strength? And I thought that was kind of important because there is like we talked about, there's a foundation of strength and everything. However, like each sport demands different types of strength, right? And so like I talked about the 1.7 times their back squat for, that's mainly our football players and more of our power sports. For our swimming and the dive, it's 1.5, right? Because we found that our athletes, that our best swimmers that we've had were at 1.5. So like each one is different. We also know that power is also joint specific. Okay. So like the power output of a parallel squat isn't going to matter as much for like a soccer player. It would matter more for a speed squat. And so like, yes, power is important, but what builds power, right? Well, force does. Well, and that's mass times acceleration. So you have to have that in there at some point, you know, just like we have to sprint, you know, I mean, we have to expose them to max velocity, you know, so there's those veins in there that always have to be going, like when you talk about the concurrent type of attitude. But if we're going to go do things concurrently, like what's the focus and the emphasis for that athlete and what they need? And so like Rob was kind of alluding to with like progressions a little bit, was with our block zero type guys, when we first start them, we're still doing jumps, but we're focusing more on the landing. Okay, we're teaching them how to break. And then when we get beyond that, like, and so like our athletes that are still below 1.5, they're doing less, they're doing jumps that are not quite as demanding. And some of them still need to focus on breaking and landing.
Adam, does your block zero go through RSI, relative strength, and like what? Like, how are you making the correlation there?
Yeah,
that's my area. I'm probably missing that. So like, sorry, just to revert back with my group that I'm doing this with, think about this. Everyone's kind of going through it. I might have some freshmen that actually may still benefit more if they were still doing more of that 8 to 10 week strength and conditioning program, right? And that progression versus this. So like, that's where I'm convicted still is, everyone's kind of all moving together, but is that the best thing now on the individual level? For the team, yes. For the kid, maybe now, no. So Adam, this is where, like, are you doing that differently? Because that may be something I need to look into now.
So yes and no, right? So when you talk about we're wanting to move the whole, that's one thing, right? And then if we have outliers, we do want to address those outliers, because those outliers, it might be the guys and girls that win your games because they're those freaks, right? And so you want to make sure that you're keeping them stimulated and you're continuing to improve their adaptations, which those are the one-offs that you can handle. And that's where you get to be fun and creative and really move the needle with them. But then with the group, like you're talking about, like we're going to typically do block zero for twice in a row. So we're going to start out doing 1x20 for about 8 weeks, sometimes 9. And so I have it 2 ways. We have some that go through our junior high program, and so they'll go through block zero 3 times at the most. And then when they come in as freshmen, we're moving with the sophomore group because we've moved them beyond that. Or if they come in as a freshman, they're in the block zero program doing the 1x20. And then when we get into the fall, those freshmen are also doing the block zero, but now we're switching our emphasis to like 3 sets of 10, doing linear periodization, going down to 5s, going down to 3s. Once they have finished that, then we start to move them a little bit more towards like the things that you're talking about, like progressing them through different lifts. So now we're going to hopefully, if we have standards for them for based on their body weight. I think it's 1.3 or 1.5 times their body weight on front squat before we'll let them back squat. Okay, so they could be a junior or senior and still front squatting. That could happen. And so like same with like we're talking about like with Preston talking about the demands, like I might have a junior or a senior, like I got a freshman or a sophomore basketball player who has not lifted with me, who's getting recruited by D1 schools. And when he comes in, we're going to start him out with block zero and see how he moves and see how he's doing. But if he's starting to progress, like I said, he's an outlier, then he can move out of that pretty fast. He doesn't have to go through the full 9 weeks. Okay, so that's like that's where things can get a little convoluted, but at the same time, what's best for that athlete, what's best for their needs. Because really that's what it comes down to is, diminish it. Like, so we want to look at limiting factors. That's what we're going to focus on with their emphasis. Like we talked about, like, do they need more strength work? Do they need more power work? I mean, what type of level of plyometrics do they need? Do they need more speed work? And then once we start to get rid of those limiting factors, we don't want to have them turn into diminishing returns, right? So like what Hoover was talking about with them squatting or being really, really strong, is that really going to move the needle anymore? So it could a little bit, but I want to try to move the needle more. So that might mean that we need to lighten the bar a little bit, or that might mean that we're going to go and use a different stimulus. Maybe we're going to start using bands with them or something like that.
Do you think loading the spine, deloading the spine helps as well? Right. So like whether that's a belt squat, like, so we have J squats. I'm a big believer in, like, man, hey, in season. Well, I think, was it Rob? Were you the one just talking about that earlier?
Yeah,
but,
we had chimed in on that. So it was like he had the relative strength
yeah.
Index, and I was saying, well, what if we're Hatfield squatting? Can we use that as our number?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same thing. Like, so for us, we want to deload the spine in season if we can. Try to like maybe help the kids out a little bit. God love them. They're already putting in so much time. They're like, all right. So that would be one thing I'm looking at. Like, okay, does that make sense? Does that work to what you're talking about? Is also maybe variation in helping get over that plateau quicker and get them on the upward curve again and going.
Yeah. So like an example, our middle linebacker can't load the spine at all, right? He can't do any axial loading. And so we've been using a lot of landmine belt squats, things like that with him, because we can't, and I don't have a pit shark. So that's how we're using him for squats. And we're doing a lot more unilateral type of things with holding dumbbells, things like that. So I think that more along the lines of, okay, it's not the lift, it's the movement pattern, right? So if we're trying to do, and like we said, the movement pattern could be down to parallel, it could be quarter squats or whatever, or it could be unilateral versus bilateral, all of those types of things. So like my baseball players, I do a lot of reverse lunges with for unilateral strength, because I'm trying to get that shoulder hip separation and I want them to get more of that stability. Whereas with my like my sprinters and my football players, we do a lot more Bulgarians with the barbell and with bands, because we're trying to adapt more speed with that, right?
Can I go through your program, Coach?
Anytime, brother.
Can you coach me for a few years?
I literally am like, man, I should intern with him and just get some extra experience. I know you're shaking your head, Vogel, but like, that's just a matter of fact, man. Like, you have intentionally put in time, bro, around this. I think the thing that I appreciate you about the most is that your certainty around what you're doing and the philosophy you have around this and what you studied. Like, you are certain on this. That doesn't mean you haven't figured out, but it means that what we're doing right now, I am certain that there has meaning, there has the science backing and everything, which for me, I feel like you're checking off some of the boxes for me, because that is not as much of a strong suit for me. It's not.
Right.
And I appreciate that part, man. Like when you're talking about your 1.7s, your 1.5s, hey, swimmer, that's where I need that now. Like, give me your rubric and I'll figure out how to adjust it accordingly for my kids. But if I could have even that reference point, like, that is gold. Again, going back to Coach Vanderbush, like, these things, they don't happen overnight, and it's a lot of sweat equity. And I don't want to just be like, hey, dude, let me mooch. But I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is unbelievable to have. And just to hear you talk about it, I'm like, those are things that I have to start collecting as well. But it'd be good to have relative measures to know across the board, like, hey, what kind of things are people seeing? Rich Burnett, same thing. We've talked to him a couple of times, like, about him and to him. He's got a lot of data too around this, and his plyomat. We talked about this, getting into single leg RSI. Yeah. So now we're looking at asymmetries. We're looking at the difference in right leg versus left leg versus both legs. I mean, you talk about being able to help a kid quickly with real data now, help a young man or young lady injury reduction first and foremost, and the second, even out. That's a huge performance advantage, man. That's the competitive advantage we all want for our kids, for sure.
Yeah, and like, so when deciding with tech, right, and what you want to use, I'm gonna give you a great story with that. Was we started doing Nordics at least 5 or 6 years ago, and our kids never took them seriously, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have seen that too, right? Like, they're just giving up on the way down. And if we're doing GHD machines, they're doing a great job of coming up, but they're not resisting on the way down. They just flop right over. And so the research out there shows that Nordics, like having strong hamstrings, long and strong hamstrings, is going to help with preventing hamstring pulls, right? And hamstring strains. And so the reason why we got Nordboard was because I wanted to quantify that for our kids. Once we started quantifying, now they care about their Nordboard scores. You know what I mean? And so, like, we started diving into the research. What is a good Nordboard score? You know, and so, like, for us, for males, it's I believe 500. I think for females, it's 420. That's like the best for what we want to see. And once they hit that number, we know we don't have to. We just need to check the score. We don't need to continue to work on it, right? And so then, like what you're going into, I had a couple guys pull hamstrings and they're over 500 on their Nordboard score. I'm going, what the heck's going on? Well, then I look at the asymmetry. Both of them are outside of 12%. I think one was 14 and one was 15 or 16% on their asymmetry. Well, that's a red flag right there. I need to make sure that I'm also looking at the asymmetries. And so, like, when we like, if we want to bring this into some of the VBT talk, that's what I want to look at with our Bulgarian squats. I want to see that when we're doing 1.0 meters per second, which is feet strength to 1.3, that whatever weight they're doing on each side, that those two numbers are close. You know what I mean? Because otherwise that's showing an asymmetry, and we need to get that number closer to 1.0 then, or whatever the highest number is of the two.
Is that the sweet spot? The 1.0, like, is that the sweet spot?
So for speed strength, right? Like for speed strength, it is.
Strength. Brian Mann just had a nice, I don't know if you guys watched that, but he had a nice presentation that he put together. I'm not sure who it was for, but it was about an hour long. He did a nice job of just breaking that down. So listeners, if you want a resource, just check him out on YouTube.
Coach, what did he do? What was it around? Just strictly velocity-based training and how to stay within that threshold?
Yeah, he was just talking about thresholds in general.
Okay.
And what he kind of went around kind of the why you'd use velocity-based training, just a lot of the stuff that he's put out before, but it was nice in the video format just because I like listening to his reasoning and some of the stories that he tells along with it. And then, obviously you listen to it on 1.5 or 2 times speed and you can get through it pretty quick and be like, oh, there's some pretty good takeaways with it also. So, I would, maybe I should link that up in the show notes.
Cool. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we could be linking in the show notes.
Coach Burnett's plyo mat should be up on there too.
With Coach Mann's that draw of his, that soothing voice.
Yes.
Like listening to him talk.
He always has good stories too, no doubt.
And he's
Coach
such a
Pedersen.
good guy. I reached out. I sent him a message on Facebook asking him about we're doing a little thing with plotting power on our hex bar deadlifts, and I sent him a question about I know who he is, and I never really had a conversation with him before this point, and he sends me a message right back. He says, "Hey, I'm at the auto mechanic right now. As soon as I get back in my office, I'll jump on a Zoom call." And I was like, "Okay, absolutely." And we were on there for probably an hour and a half talking about it, and he was just such a genuinely nice, unbelievably smart guy.
Very true.
And to think, who knows what people are paying him to come and speak for 45 or 50 minutes, and he's willing to spend an hour on the phone with some guy he's probably run across his name on social media or something, like, oh, that guy, that guy, and then he's
the meme guy. Lots of memes.
I'm a fan, but so he's a great dude.
Coach Pedersen, not to put you on the spot here, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. Did you get a chance to listen to everything? Have you already listened to the whole thing or watched it with Mann?
Yes. Yep.
Any takeaways just kind of off the top of your head around what we've been talking about?
All my notes are at school at the moment.
That's okay. That's why I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I totally put you on the spot there.
No, I like it. So Coach Mann, so I interned for a short time at Mizzou, and
nice.
And so I just remember Coach Mann always like taking the time to teach, and to like the few times that I thought was really cool is he'd bring his class. He was teaching classes at the time while coaching, and he'd bring his class in, and they'd be like breaking down movements. Like it was like a biomechanics class, I think, but breaking down movements in the weight room. And so a lot of stories that way. But the one that I always remember him talking about over and over and over is like just the use of Tendo units, and where velocity based training started to come from, because he goes to Pat Ivy and he says, hey, what's the point of doing hang cleans? And it's like, well, so that our vertical force goes up or something like that. And he's like, well, shouldn't that mean our vertical jump goes up? And Pat's like, yeah, why are you asking me this stuff? And then Brian's like, well, like right now our vertical jumps are not going up and our hang clean numbers are. What's the deal with this? So like started to dive in and just asking questions. So it's cool, because hopefully every time we make an advancement in our field, it should be asking good questions.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I'm just going to push back a little bit with you, Coach Atallah, just you said that Adam Vogel is certain about everything, and not to put words in his mouth, I would say that he might push back against it too. I don't know if he would be certain, and I don't know if any of us should be certain, but I think he's convicted.
Yeah.
He speaks with conviction, and he knows what he's doing for his athletes. So, I'm not trying to. I know.
I don't take that personally. It's fine, dude. It's all good.
And I love it because
I think Mike Boyle said that you always doing what you think is the best at that moment, but a year or 2 years from now, you're going to look back and say, well, I can't do that. So, what we're talking about right now, I guarantee you, if we have a reunion show in a couple years, we're going to be like, yeah, remember what Hoover said about the cold jump? What was he doing? Or there's going to be some, like where we go back and say, oh man, because I had an idea for an article talking about like what I've learned over the last 5 years. And I had to actually sit down to kind of start thinking about that. And I was like, wow, like it started because my wife was listening to a conversation like this. And she used to be the American Sign Language interpreter in my strength conditioning classes. So she kind of understands the talk a little bit. And she came in and she said, you sound a lot smarter than you did 5 years ago. I was like, that led me down this road of thinking for this article. I thought, wow, in 5 years, the things that have changed. And then if you we'll go back 10 years, like every one of us, and I'm a lot older, but if you look back 10 years, you're like, holy cow, like, things we were doing, and not that they were bad, but they were what we thought were best at that moment. And I think that probably every single person's going to go in the weight room at the strength lab or whatever tomorrow, and we're going to do what we think is best at that moment. And it may or may not be, and it may be something that changes, but we're convicted about it. And that's the important part.
It's like stories of hope that someday maybe I can be a little bit closer to what you guys are doing. I'm not where you guys are at yet, but I want to be. So
see, I said the same thing. I said, can we do this podcast like 2 years from now? Like, so
yeah. Right. Well, the cool thing is everybody is, and I'm looking at I look at Schofield like, my God, like how do I get within how can I be a planet orbiting in his atmosphere, because so we all have that. I was telling, I was frustrated. I'm sorry, I'm a kind of a story guy too, but I was getting frustrated with one of our, with a football coach. This was years ago, and 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, I'd like to just sit him down in front of his assistant football coaches and just embarrass him about some of the things he's asking me to do and say that I know are wrong. And then I took a step back and I said, that would be very hypocritical, because there are so many people in this world that could sit me down and do the exact same thing and make me feel just ridiculous, that you never want to be that guy. And, but the cool thing about it is most people that are like that in our field will let you come into their universe, and that's one cool thing about, a high school association, about this Play Academy thing, about just these podcasts, is all of a sudden, I have a network of coaches in 50 states that I can reach out to and talk to and learn things from. And I think, not to get too far off the topic, but that is what makes our field, really cool, because, football coaches are like, no, I'm not going to show you how I'm running inside zone. We got top secret how we're running this play that's been run the same by every team for 50 years, but we do it different. In our field, it's really awesome that, like I can tell you right now, I will tell anybody anything that I know, and you guys sitting on this obviously will too. So, but it's just a really cool situation. Mm-hmm.
We're collaborating, man. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're all collaborating because for us, we have no skin in the game except to help the young people that we have been entrusted with each and every day.
Yep.
Right. Like, I'm just telling you right now, I look at, like, when I'm looking at this group, I'm like, I am so fortunate just to be sitting here talking with you guys and learning. I watch you guys and what you're doing. And I am fortunate to get this kind of resource at my disposal. Right. I mean, that's the collaborative culture. And so, Preston, here's where I'm going to push back at you. So what I'm getting at with my certainty comment is this. No, and this is important.
Twitter war.
But no, it's very simple. Vogel's certainty right now in what area we're focusing on takes my doubt away from going in and pursuing this further. I'm eliminating the doubt of holding myself back from doing something that may help my kids because I hear certainty in the way. And again, the conviction that Vogel has, that Hoover has, Brokaw, our national coach of the year in the NHSSCA, and he's sitting here asking about how he can then level up. So to me, that's where I use the word certainty, because it overtakes any of the doubt that I have that I'm not qualified to be in this room speaking this way. I don't have much figured out other than I know that I need to be doing it. So if they tell me something, or if they're going to go it that way. So anyway, it's a refined rebuttal. But it's I agree with you though. I agree with you. It is absolutely something that we're not certain on of what we're doing, but we're pushing forward. And I'm just glad that I'm not as doubtful because of these guys.
What's great about this idea of the power and the power output and everything that we're gaining or leaning towards is that it's all just like a treasure map, right? Like here's these things that have shown to have great impact on your athlete's performance. If you can get them to these levels, nobody's going to tell you how they got there. You got to kind of figure it out yourself. And that's what makes it great. So it's from like what Coach Hoover was talking about, we're punching in the data. It's like a football coach, going back to that, learning the plays by scouting the other team and putting the down and distance markers and all that kind of stuff. You got to go through all of that. You can't just be handed, the movements and the sets and reps and progressions, because it's not going to work out that way. That's how it may have worked out for that coach, but it's not how it's going to work out for you. And it's not how it's going to work out for that coach next year, because it's always going to be some sort of a tweak or adjustment to get to your treasure.
That's the art of it, man. That's the art. I don't know if you guys read the book, The System, but they're talking in there about how they were, Coach Parker and those guys were going to Russia, and they thought the Russians were jerking them around because they ask all these questions, and the Russian would always answer, it's the coach's eye. It's the coach's eye. And they thought, oh, these Russians don't want to tell us how they're doing stuff. And then after they kind of got what that translation actually meant, they realized that they can't tell you, because I can't hand Adam a program, or Rob hand Preston a program, or Adam hand me a program that they do with their kids, because we'd have to it's like Rob just said, it's a treasure map that everybody's treasure's kind of in different spots. We just have to find roads to get there, and that coach's eye is what really makes that whole thing run. And I thought that was kind of a cool anecdote by Coach Parker, and he nailed it talking about that.
So maybe to the point to start tying this up a little bit. And I like getting people together. I enjoy listening to people talk, and I love sharing ideas because, if we come away from this and we can implement, if we can strive, if we can try to make the big time where we're at, and pull people along with us, that's truly what I'm in for it, and I love, Coach Atallah has said it like a few times, this is a service industry, right? We're here to serve our athletes, and the way that it's kind of went at the high school level, and the way that I feel, going from college level to high school level, at first I felt like I was on an island, because in a college setting, you have a staff. And in a high school setting, a lot of times you don't. And what I've found now is there is so much more connection and all of that at the high school level than I ever saw at the collegiate level. Like, you have your staff, but outside of that, not so much. So so thankful for the NHS SCA, so thankful for what you guys are doing with the play mentorship. I think that's an awesome deal.
It's been huge.
Yeah. And then just taking the time to reach other people and to learn is always so fun. So a lot of stuff to dive into, a lot of stuff to continue from. I think I'm going to have to check out what you guys are doing and get you both back on the show. We got a couple of alums, Coach Hoover and Coach Brokaw, but I have to get you guys on and pick your brain a little bit more, so I can not totally steal your program, but learn some of the stuff on your treasure map. If you're going to use Coach Brokaw.
Steal it, man. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, there we go.
Anything we can do to collaborate, for sure, brother.
Yep.
That's awesome. Thanks for having us on specifically. Thanks for having me on. This is a little, I'm not gonna lie, man. This is my first strength and conditioning podcast that I've been on.
Let's go.
Keeping it real, man. So,
Yeah.
for me, a little vulnerable and put myself out there, and hopefully something was taken away. I know that I just learned even more. Again, it's like another mentorship call right now. So this was awesome. Thanks for hosting and what you guys are doing to help grow the profession, man. I appreciate it, Coach.
No problem. Hey guys, so in the show notes for the listeners, we'll try to link up as many things that we talked about as possible, just so that you have some resources. And then also I'll put all these coaches' contact information in the show notes, just so that you can reach out to them, because literally each one of these guys sound like they just want to help people. So keep the conversation going. Reach out to these guys. I know they'd appreciate it. So thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I enjoyed it a great deal.